Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. I'm sure I've spoken with most of you before, but just in case, I will give myself a quick introduction. My name is Bill Steppen. I am your account manager for the AIMsi software here at Tri-Technical Systems. Quick background on myself. I got started with the company back in 2000 as one of the support technicians for, at then, the soft music software, which then became AIMsi. Worked my way up through the premium support technician ranks, and then became assistant support manager, and then served as support manager for a few years. And now I'm very happy to help out and serve you all as your account manager for Tri-Technical Systems. So if you ever have any questions about your account or the services that we provide, or whatever modules you may be looking for that maybe you don't have, feel free to get in touch with me at any time, and I'll certainly be able to help out any way that I can, just to make sure that you're getting the most out of your software investment. But with that, with my background, the higher-ups here at TriTech feel that I am qualified to help out with doing some of these webinars. And today we're going to be covering the budgeting aspect of AIMsi, and we're going to have plenty of time to cover it in. To be honest, we've booked this hour for specifically the budgeting purposes. You all should have received an email that has a brief outline of kind of what we're going to be covering. I say brief because in all reality, there's not a whole lot to setting up the budgeting, but we have the hour allotted for it because that'll give us plenty of opportunity to really go in depth with it, especially in this time and with the economy and everyone kind of watching their spending habits. We definitely want to make sure that the money that we have coming in and the money that we have going out, that we keep track of that ever so closely. And so to probably the best way of doing that is just to make use of the budgeting tools that are built into your AIMsi system. We're going to be assuming throughout this webinar that you are making use, or that you have purchased and you are making use of the General Ledger module. If you are either unfamiliar with the General Ledger module or you have not purchased it, to basically right up front, I don't know how much you'll be able to get out of this, but that we have a full hour to cover any questions that you may have. I actually have, just so you know, I've muted everyone's telephones or microphones, whatever you may be using to listen in to the presentation here, just so that we don't have a lot of interference from maybe random noises from music shops or bike shops or wherever you may be calling in from. But you should be seeing a chat window in the lower right corner. So you should be seeing that. It looks like a couple people have been saying hello back and forth, which is awesome. If you do have any questions throughout the webinar, feel free to drop those into that chat window, and I'll definitely try and answer those as best as I can in the time that we have here. And if it's an in-depth question, feel free to request some mic time there as well. And what I can do is I can unmute your phone or your microphone, and that way we can develop a conversation if it's a really in-depth question, or if maybe we need to kind of dig deep through it. But with that, I'm actually going to go ahead and start up my screen here. So you should be seeing my AIMsi. This is my test program that we have here. If you have that outline in front of you, hopefully you've printed that out. What I usually encourage people to do is to print that out and then take notes directly on that piece of paper, so that whatever whatever notes you've gleaned from the webinar you have right there on the on that budgeting outline, so that you can kind of keep them all in track, and that way if you go back and we're wondering maybe what aspect we were talking about at any given time, it just helps to keep everything a little bit organized. At least that works for me. I know everyone else learns a little bit differently, but with that, let's go ahead and jump right into the outline there. As you can see, there's not a whole lot with the outline, but with the budgeting, and this is going to be true of any type of budgeting software, to be able to plan your revenue and expenses, to be able to establish spending limits, especially to help prevent impulse purchases. And a nice aspect of the AIMsi software is if you have a larger store and you've established departments, you'll be able to actually establish your budgets by department and especially by location if you have more than one location. We're not going to spend a whole lot of time on the department aspect. We'll save that for another webinar, but if you're not familiar with departments, just know that the AIMsi software with the general ledger module, you can establish departments. If your store is departmentalized, say if you are a music store and you have a separate department for music, like sheet music and band and orchestra and guitars and pianos and lessons and things like that, you can actually departmentalize the general ledger so that you can keep track of the revenue and expenses that are going back and forth in those different departments, so you can actually see which of your departments are the most profitable and maybe which ones need a little bit of work to kind of pick up the pace, and especially find out which ones are losing money. So, but we're not gonna spend a whole lot of time with the departments. Like I said, we can save that for another webinar later on. But basically, what you'll want to do is, if you haven't already done so, you're going to want to sit down with your CPA or whoever you work with to handle your budgeting, and kind of take a look at the general ledger. The general ledger modules and the general ledger accounts that you have available. And this wasn't actually on the outline, but a good report to just see if you're unfamiliar with your general ledger, a good report to see which accounts you already have established is to go into your report catalog, and then on the report catalog you can go down to, let's see if I can refresh my memory what it's called. Should be list, yeah, there we go, list chart of accounts. If you run this report, this is going to be a good report as I bring it up here, where you can actually see all of the different areas, not only with just the revenue and expenses, as I print this to screen, that you can start to plan out where you want to establish some budgets, but you can also see all of the different assets, liabilities, equity accounts, and then your income and expense accounts. And the income and expense accounts are where you can establish budgets, because with the assets and the liabilities, those are going to be fluctuating pretty periodically, and you really can't budget for those accounts. But with the income and expense, you can guesstimate how much you're anticipating coming in from sales, and then based on how much you budget for coming in, you can then plan for how much you are going to be spending on the expense side. And as you see here with the expenses, I'm just going to kind of focus a little bit more on the expenses. You can see there's a lot of different areas that are already established for your expenses, as far as if I just go down the list here, vehicle depreciation, a lot of depreciation accounts, travel expenses, deliveries, telephone, postage, supplies, inventory shrinkage, inventory in-store use. If I actually go back a page, you'll probably see some of the more commonplace ones like wages, advertisings, promotions, building rent, utilities, building maintenance, property taxes, insurance. And then just even before that with the incomes, your income accounts divided into two subsections, I guess you could say. The 400 accounts, you'll see the later end of the 400 accounts here, but those are for your merchandise sales and your cost of merchandise sales and things of that nature. And then your 500 accounts for your income and revenue, those are for service type incomes. You'll see here as an example we have short-term rentals, rental income, interest on rentals, maintenance, late charges, other charges, rent collection, lesson income, service labor, service parts. If you don't keep track of individual parts in your system that wouldn't be categorized underneath your inventory, you can actually just keep track of them underneath a general service parts category that would go underneath this 521 account. And so these are all the different ledger accounts that you can budget for. So probably what you'll want to do is sit down with your CPA, print this list out, and then that way if your CPA is unfamiliar with your ledger system, this will help them to get acquainted with that and to help start planning that budget. Once you have planned how much you want to spend in those different areas, or how much you want to budget for, you can then go underneath maintenance and to ledger maintenance, and then everything is pretty much taken care of underneath this budgeting area here of the ledger maintenance. All the different aspects that you see on the outline that you've been provided can be found underneath this modified budget area. You'll see a couple of different tabs up at the top for single modification, mass modification, and an import. And what we like to recommend if you are establishing this budget for the first time is to go underneath the mass modification tab. The mass modification tab allows you to either add or delete records, to create new budget records for the following date range, to create new budget records for the location, for the department, for the specific ledger number, and create new budget records with the budget amount. Obviously, the budget amount is going to be very important. What you'll probably find, especially in the case of the expenses for the commonplace expenses like your utilities, your building rent, things that are going to be constant and without a lot of fluctuation month after month after month. This is going to be a great way of establishing that budget amount for those particular months. Now, the reason we have a mass modification and why we're not focusing too much right now on the single modification is the budget is going to be established on a per month basis. And so what you would normally do is you would go here to, let's say you wanted to establish your budget amount for the building rent. So you would go to here, you would click on Add New Records, and then create new budget amounts for the following date range. Let's say that you wanted to establish your budget for the next 6 months. And so we would say, let's see, this is September, so let's say October 1st of 2009 through, and then let's say 6 months, so 10 plus 6 is 4, 31 of 010 actually, 010, 2010, 2010. That's going to be a fun one when we actually get to next year. How are people going to be saying it? Are they going to be saying 2010, or are they going to be saying 2010? So anyway, that's my little bit of a tangent there, but anyway, and then when we get down to the next line here, it's going to be creating new budget records for the following location. If you have one location, obviously this isn't going to be that big of an issue. If you do have more than one location, AIMsi can keep track and will keep track of the individual location budgets. So if you do have more than one location, then you'll need to establish budgets for the individual locations. So I'm just going to focus on the Dubuque location, and we also have create budget records for the following department. I don't have any departments established. That's why we're not going to focus too much on departments. But again, if you do have if you have departmentalized your system, then this is going to let you go in and focus and create budgets for those different locations, for those different departments. Create new budget records for the following ledger number. This is where we start to get into the nitty-gritty, and this is where we're going to be actually putting in that ledger number for the specific account that we want to focus on. Now, if you don't know what the ledger number is for the account that you want to establish, you can, while you're on that field, hit F6 like I just have, and this will come up with a pick ledger number field that you can either sort by description or by ledger number. Now it's currently sorted by description because if you look up here, it says look for description, and you'll see a little caret there. If I click on the ledger number field, then it'll say look for ledger number, and the caret will be over on this field. As is the case with most every place else in AIMsi, when you see any tables like this, if the header for that column is in boldface type, then it is sortable. So you can click right on that column, and then that caret will show not only which column is currently being sorted, but how it's being sorted. If the caret is facing to the right, then it's going from A to Z, or from the low number to the high number. If you click on it again and turn it around the other way, then it will be sorted in the opposite direction. You'll see, even though since I was highlighted on AP Interstore Clearing, it's actually now moved to the bottom of the list, and then I can sort through it the other way. But what I'm going to do is sort it this way, and I already know that this is going to be for building maintenance. So I can actually start typing in building, or building rent, excuse me. And just like I was saying before, your 400 and 500 accounts are your income or revenue, and then your 600 accounts are your expenses. So if you want to verify that you're going into the right account when you are planning for your budget, after you've selected that particular ledger number, actually before you've selected it, you can just take a quick look at the ledger number to make sure that that's the ledger number that you're planning for it to go into, as far as whether or not it's a revenue or an expense. Since we want to talk about the expenses in this particular area, where we want to make sure it's a 600 number, and it is, so we can go ahead and click on Select. So that'll move it into that field, and then create new budget records with the budget amount. Since we know that the building rent is going to be a specific amount each month, we can go ahead and let's just say it's $600, and I can put that amount in, and then I can click Proceed. You must use the first day of the month for each date. Oops. So change that to the first, and then click Proceed. And now that will have created those records. Now it hasn't saved them just yet, but it has put them into kind of a temporary file. What I can do now is I can click on this Save button. I can go through and I can add all the different records if I want to, but what I'm going to do is click Save. And now on I'm actually on the Single Modification tab, and this will actually, the reason we didn't start on the Single Modification tab is because this is really more used to go back and look at the actual amounts that have already been established. One thing I should point out when we're talking about the budgeting amount, if you're familiar with accounting, when it comes to the income or the revenue amounts, those should technically be those are going to be listed. If you think about your accounting, I don't know how many of you have had any accounting classes. I've only had rudimentary accounting classes myself. But when it comes to the income or revenue amounts, those should technically be listed as a credit. And in AIMsi, credits are listed as a negative amount. And when it comes to expenses, those are listed as debits, and debits in our system are positive amounts. So you'll see when I listed out the the expenses for building rent, I put in a positive $600. If I was going to budget for, let's say, rental income, which is a revenue amount, and I wanted to budget for that, and I know that we're going to be having, let's say, $40,000 coming in rental revenue for the next couple of months, I would actually budget that out as a negative amount. So if I were to go back to the mass modification tab, and this has kept those records in here for me, so what I can do is I can actually change this budget record for the ledger number, and again I'll hit F6 and I will type in rental to look for the rental income. And there it is, and I'm verifying that it's 510-1, so I'm verifying that that's the revenue account that I want. And I'll select that. And then I know that, let's say not so much $40,000. Let's say I know for a fact that we're going to have $20,000 coming in rental revenue. So I can put in a negative 20. Let's try that again. A negative $20,000, and then I can proceed with that and add that in. And then that will show up over here as well on the single modification tab. Even though it's highlighted on that mass modification tab, it's really on the single modification. That's just my window not refreshing, in case you're curious on that. But that's another way of establishing your income. Let's say that maybe if I know that for the month of February of next year, let's say if we knew that there's going to be a little bit more income coming in that month, we want to go ahead and budget for that. I can highlight the single modification listing, and I can go over here and I can say, let's say instead of $20,000, let's say maybe it's $22,000, and I can click on that and just click on the Save button to modify that particular record. So that's one way that you can make use not only of the mass modification tab to go in and establish your mass records for however many months you want to plan for. I'm using 6 in this particular example, but this is really up to you how much you want to budget out for, or how much you can budget out for. I know I've spoken with a couple of CFOs who have budgeted out all the way out to a year in advance. So if you have that capability, then you can certainly budget for as far out as you want, or as maybe just for only a couple of months. Maybe what you might want to do, and this is something I've recommended in the past, not only with budgeting, but just across the AIMsi board as well. Anytime you're doing something new, what you might want to do is, first of all, before you even go in and try this in your live system, set up a test system and then use that to establish maybe just a month of budget. If you establish a month of budget and then you and then you can go in and you can play around with your test system and then try it out and see how things are going, maybe over the course of a couple of days, just whenever you have a few minutes here and there, go in and punch in some sales and punch in some AP invoices to show some money going out. And then that way you can, you can go in and then you can check out your budgeting reports to make sure that everything is going smoothly. And then after that first month, then you can take some real good time, maybe a half an hour or an hour, or however long you want to plan out for, and then you can punch in a longer period of time into your AIMsi system. And then into your live system, and then that way you can really start to keep track of the budgeting in your live system. And then that way, in the unlikely event that something goes wrong, you don't have to worry about messing up your live system. So that's the mass modification and the single modification. And actually, I do see a quick question here. Amy has a question that says, doesn't AIMsi automatically recognize negative amounts if using the proper account number? When in the practice that I've done with the budgeting system, when it comes to the budgeting system, you'll want to make sure that you're properly putting in the credits and the debits as negative and positive amounts. There are areas in AIMsi that will automatically track that for you when it comes to putting in the proper signage, so to speak. But when we talk about establishing a budget, because there are actually areas in the revenue accounts that that are going to be either positive or negative. There are some what I refer to. I don't know if this is proper accounting lingo, but there are some contra revenue accounts in there. Most notably, the cost accounts for cost of merchandise sold, which would actually have what we would call a positive amount, which would technically be a debit, to help offset and show the proper listing for the revenue that you have coming in for inventory sales. And so that's like I said, those are in the 400 listings, and even though they're in that listing, the system is going to anticipate you putting in the proper signage for that. That is a good question, and that is something that has been plugged into other areas, but for the budgeting, it's going to assume that you want to specifically plan for those different amounts that are coming in or going out. It's not going to it can't assume that that just because you're plugging an amount into an expense, that it's actually anticipating that that's going to be the proper signage. So you'll need to make sure that you're plugging that signage in. Hopefully that makes sense and I didn't ramble too much there. If I didn't answer that, then let me know. But with the budgeting, you want to plan accordingly for that. With the budgeting, there's one other aspect that, and especially if you have a larger store and you have a lot of money coming in and going out, and you don't want to sit down all in one lump sum, all in one great big time period at this mass modification and single modification screen, planning these different budgeting amounts out. You can actually establish them in a Microsoft Excel file, and then you can import that amount in. And with that, we have this tab for importing. And basically what this tab here is for is not so much to create the file, but it does have some pointers on how you can create the file, and then you can go back and create that file in Excel and then bring it back here and point it to that file name and then import it in. Some things to consider on here, just like it says, this will allow you to import your budget records from an Excel file. The columns in the Excel file must match the following. Column A is a GL number. Column B is the general ledger sub number. Column C is your location code. Column D is your budget amount. Column E is the date, and it must match that specific format, month, day, year, and then column F is your department code. Now, if you are unfamiliar with these different codes, if we take a look, for example, at the mass modification tab, and we look at the general ledger number, the 510 is the general ledger number, and then the 1 is the sub number. So when we talk about GL number and GL sub number, if we were establishing your budgeting for 510-1, column A would have a 510 in it, and then column B would have a 1 in it. When it comes to location code, if you're unfamiliar with your location codes that you've established, you can go underneath Maintenance, General Maintenance, and Locations. And then in here, you'll find your codes that you've established for the different locations that you've created. And you'll see here for Dubuque, the code is a capital D, and then for Iowa City, our code is a capital I. So whatever you have established for your specific locations, you can find that underneath maintenance, general maintenance, and locations. By that same aspect, if you're looking for the department code, if you've established departments, you can go underneath maintenance, ledger maintenance, and add change departments. And then whatever departments you've established here, the code will be, and this is specifically numeric. You can't have alpha characters in here. It'll be somewhere between 1 and 50. So you can have up to 50 departments in your system, and they'll just be 1 through 50. So when you're filling in that column F, if you've established departments, then you'll be putting that in. Now, if you have not created departments for your general ledger system, your column F is going to be blank. But even if you only have one location, you'll still need to put in that location code. So the location code is very important. The department code, not as important. But if you have established departments, then you will need to go in and establish budgets for those specific departments. Otherwise, the budgeting won't match up. So as an example, what I'm actually going to do is open up an Excel screen in case you're only vaguely familiar with Microsoft Excel. This is an Excel file. This is a blank Excel file. You'll see across the top are the different columns that we were referring to back in the AIMsi program. So this is column A. If you recall, column A was the general ledger number. Column B was the general ledger sub number. Column C was, and let me just move my own screen so I can remember that. Well, column C was the location code. Column D was the budget amount. Column E was the date, and column F was the department. Not even sure if that's actually affecting your screen as I'm moving it around on mine, but just so you know that that's how that was. In case there was stuff moving around on the screen, that's just why I was moving stuff around. When it comes to actually importing from an Excel file, the first column is not, or excuse me, the first row is not going to be brought in. So you can actually, when you're establishing this, you can actually go in and for column A, row 1, you can actually go in and type in GL number. And then you can do GL sub number. And then you can do, what was this, location. And then column D was, and I already forgot what column D was. Column D was the budget amount. And then column E was the date. And then column F was department. So you can go in and you can actually establish that first row so that you don't have to bounce back and forth and remember what things were. And then if the width of those bugs you as much as it does me, you can double click on these little areas here to actually modify that the width of that so that it's matching the widest aspect of what you have typed in. With that, then you can then go in and you can say GL number in row 2 is 510. The GL sub number is 1. The location was a capital D. The budget amount, if this was for the income, this is going to be a negative 20,000. The date was going to be 10/1 of 2009. And again, what I'll do is I will double click on there, and actually it already modified it for me. And since I didn't have any department codes, I'm going to actually leave that column blank. And then what you would do, if you have a large, like I was saying, if you have a large store, and it's going to take some time to establish these. To establish this budget, and you don't want to have to do it all on the same screen, save some budget, and then maybe something comes up in AIMsi and you have to go and do something else in AIMsi. You can actually establish this Excel file on the side, in the background of AIMsi, you don't have to worry about having AIMsi even open while you're establishing this. And then when everything is filled out and correct in your CPA, and you have sat down and verified that this is the budget that you want to establish, then you can go in and you can save this. So you can go in and save this however you want to save it. I'm actually going to save this. But you would go in and save the file to a place that you can actually find from your main AIMsi system. So if you have more than one computer at your store, you would want to make sure that you save this someplace that can be accessed from the AIMsi server, or at least from the AIMsi system. And so, like, let's say if you're on the server computer, or let's say if you're on the workstation computer, and then you want to save this to the server computer so that you can then go in later on from maybe like a different computer and actually establish it, you would want to make sure that you save it to the server computer. If you have questions on how to, make sure that you're saving it to a specific location, generally when you're saving things in Microsoft programs, it's going to try and save it to its own Microsoft directory. In fact, if I click on this Save button, just to give an example, I don't know if you're seeing this. Let me bring this over here so you hopefully you can see it. This is actually trying to save it into my Documents folder, so that's good. So it'll try and save it into the local My Documents folder of where you're at with Microsoft Excel. I know with other Microsoft programs like Microsoft Word, it tries to save it into like a specific folder for, like, if you're saving a document, or if you're saving a template, it'll try and save it into a templates folder. But just so you know that that's where that is, and then you can actually then establish it in a different location on your network. If you have network access, which you should, you can go in and save it to the AIMsi folder on your server. Hopefully, again, that made sense. If you have questions with that, technical support may be able to help out, but probably your best bet is whoever helped establish your computer network in your store. They'll probably be the most helpful in learning how to do those basic Windows commands of saving files and things like that. But once you have saved your Excel file and you're happy with it, then you can go back to your AIMsi system, and then you can go in and you can say File Name, and you can click on Find, and then you can point it directly to that Excel file that you've saved. One thing to make note of, I don't know if this is going to be a concern or not with Microsoft Excel, because I have not actually tested this. I haven't had the time to test this. But if you have Excel or Office 2007, it actually saves as a different format than previous Excels. It'll have like an XLSX at the end of it. So if you are saving that file, for instance, I'm going to actually just jump back here so you can kind of see what I'm chatting about. And hopefully this will make more sense. When I'm clicking on this Save button, you'll see down here, Save as Type Excel Workbook, because this is Excel 2007, and you'll see it has an XLSX at the end. What you might want to do, just to be on the safe side, if you have 2007, is to save it as an Excel 97 through 2003 workbook. You'll see it doesn't have that X on the end, and then that way when you're going in and saving it, it'll be compatible with that older version of Excel. Again, I'm not sure if that's going to make a difference from the AIMsi side of things, but just to be on the safe side, that will be a good habit to get in the habit of. Same thing with if you're editing Word documents for, say, if you're setting up letter templates or things like that for having your AIMsi system mail out or email out letters or print templates, you'll want to make sure that you're saving it as a 97-2003 file, just so that you have notion, in the back of your head. Once you have saved that, and then you go back into your AIMsi system and you import that file in, and I'm actually not going to import that in because obviously I'm not going to spend the time here to create an entire ledger budget. But you would import that in, and it would look just like your single modifications when you've imported that in. So it'll have all of the different areas, the different ledger numbers that you've budgeted for, and then you'll be able to go in and either verify that everything is imported in correctly, and once you verified that, then you can exit out of here, and your budget is established. Now, to check out and see how you're doing on your budget, you can go into the report system, into the report catalog, and on your GL tab, you have a budget comparison report. Just like it says, this will compare your estimated budget with the actual income statement. So what it will do is, if you're unfamiliar with the general ledger, and again, I'm kind of hoping that you are familiar, but the general ledger is updated in real time, as is the income statement. So as you receive inventory in, and as you sell inventory, and as you pay your employees, and as you cut checks for your instructors, and as you bring in money for your repairs, and as you write checks for your vendors and your utility companies, all of that is updating your general ledger in real time. So you can run an income statement at any given time and see up to the minute finances as far as how is your store is doing. So with that in mind, you can run this budget comparison at any time, and then you can put in a date range of whatever you want to put it in for. Let's say I'm just going to do 10/1 of 09 through 11/1 of 09. And the region, that's something that you can establish. We're going to leave that blank. We're going to run it for the Dubuque location. We're going to not worry about departments. And I'm going to click OK. And I'm just going to bring this up to screen. And even though there's not going to be a whole lot of data in here, this will at least give you an idea of what it will look like. So if you're familiar with the income statements in the AIMsi system, usually on an income statement you have more in the middle area, the left-hand side, of course, is the different areas that you've established in this particular case. These are the areas that you've established budgets for. And then usually in the middle is your current year to date, and then on the right-hand side is your prior year. Well, in this particular report, your budget. And so in here, you're going to see the current as far as what has actually been brought in for the date range that was established for the areas that you've established budgets for. And then on the right-hand side, you're going to see the budgeting amounts that have actually been created for that. So you'll see here, and again, this really doesn't have any amounts in it, but you will notice that on the budget side, it's showing $40,000. Again, that's because I'm running it for 2 months, and you'll recall that I created it for 6 months, and so it was $20,000 a month for the income and $600 a month for the building rent. You'll also recall, just like Amy was asking about whether or not it's going to compensate for the proper signage. If I had just put in $20,000 for the income, for the rental income, this would actually be showing that I'm budgeting to have $40,000 in returns over those 2 months if I hadn't put in the negative signage. So again, you want to make sure that you're putting in the proper signage when you're budgeting for your income and expense. And again, the incomes should have a credit amount, except for the cost of merchandise sales. If you're going to be budgeting for those should have a positive amount, and then your expenses should have a positive amount as well when it comes to proper accounting practices. So this is a good way of seeing how you're doing on budgeting. So basically, the closer you are to that number, then especially in the case of budgeting for income, if you're over the budget amount, of course that's a great thing to have. But if you want, maybe you might want to go back and modify the budget for the next couple of months for the income to kind of take that into account, and that way you can, if you budget for more income coming in, then then of course you can budget for more expenses going out, maybe for some investments in additional merchandise or in probably not so much merchandise, but maybe for improvements to the store, maybe for some additional areas in customer service, or maybe for some AIMsi software that you have not yet purchased and you wanted to sign up for some services that we have. And with that, my plug is done. But that's just a good way of comparing what you have set up for your budget. And really, that's about all there is to the budgeting. It's something that a lot of people don't like to do. They don't like to budget for how much is going out and how much is coming in just on a personal basis. But with, of course, when running a business, that's going to be pretty critical. And I've always had it told to me, if you do not have a budget, then you don't have a business. And so what better way to incorporate not only a budget, but the investment that you've made with the retail software than putting a budget into your AIMsi system. So hopefully that all made sense. If you have any questions with what we've covered, feel free to punch those into that chat window, and we'll go ahead and I'll answer those as best as I can. But hopefully you were able to get some good information out of this. This pretty much concludes the webinar, but we've got plenty of time here if you have some questions, and I'll be happy to answer those. But thanks for everyone for attending, and let's see. Jim has some questions. He asks, does year-end close have any effect on that you've set up past the year-end close? Let me read that back to myself here. If I'm reading this correctly, you're wondering if after you've closed the year-end, does it have any effect on budgets? So, like, let's say if I've established a budget just like I did for October through April of next year, and my fiscal year ends in December 31st, so I run a year-end close for 2009. Is that are you asking if that's going to be affecting it for 2010 after running that year-end close? Okay, if I've set up budgets for 10/109 through 4/1 of 2010 and I close 9/30, any effect? No, that won't have any effect on that. Ideally, when you run your year-end close, everything's going to be in balance, and basically all it's going to do is just it's not going to modify the ledger amounts at all. All it's going to do is, just like any ledger system, it's going to total up the income and expense, and whatever the retained amount is, that will get moved into retained earnings. And then, of course, with the assets line and liabilities, those will just have their balances brought forward. So that won't have any effect on that. Any other questions? Again, if you have a question that maybe you don't want to spend the time typing out if it's a lengthy question, you're welcome, Jim. If you don't want to spend the time to type it out, just request an unmute of your phone or your microphone, and I'll be happy to unmute your phone so that you can voice your question and we can get it taken care of. Craig has a question. He asks, do all of the general ledger accounts need to be in the mass modify spreadsheet or just accounts with budget numbers? In the mass modify spreadsheet, it's just going to be the accounts with budget numbers. Just like you saw when I did the mass modification, I really only did it for two ledger numbers, one income and one expense. Obviously, there's a lot more income and expense accounts than just those two. So if you want to budget say just for a couple of your income and expense accounts, maybe the ones that are very easy to budget for, especially in the beginning when you're just kind of learning how it's being used and you're going in and doing it for the first time. You saw that I was able to establish it just for a couple of accounts and then very effectively run the budget comparison report without having it come up and say you haven't established budgets for these particular accounts. That being said, just like I was chatting about before, you would not be able to establish budgets for your asset or liability accounts, and because it doesn't make any sense to budget for those, nor can you budget for equity just for that same reason. And if you do have departments, you will need to establish the department codes when you're plugging in those budget amounts. Otherwise, when the system is actually generating ledger entries, they won't match up with the correct budgeting. Hopefully that made sense. You're welcome, Amy. That was a good question, Craig. Craig also asks, can you budget for fixed asset purchases such as software or FF&E? When it comes to fixed asset purchases, as long as it's going to register as a revenue or an expense, for instance, like you're saying, if you're purchasing software, hopefully from us, and anything that you purchase as an expense, be it software or be it even if you're going to be budgeting for depreciation of not so much software, but maybe for any hardware that you have, cash drawers, barcode blasters, things that are a little bit more obvious like rental vehicles or delivery vehicles, things like that. You can budget for things of that nature. For fixed asset purchases, when it comes to things that are usually things that are depreciated are going to be listed as fixed asset. So you can budget on the expense side when it comes to expensing out that depreciation, but you wouldn't be able to budget on the asset side because again the system doesn't. When we're talking about budgeting, we're talking about an income statement, and the income statement, if obviously doesn't include assets and liabilities, that's on your balance sheet, and so you're only budgeting for your income statement. Does that make sense? Okay. You're welcome. Any other questions? Or even if you wanted me to go back through any other areas, we have enough time. I can go back and bring up areas that maybe you wanted a little bit more clarification on with the budgeting, the mass modification, single modification. We can go back and look at the Excel file. We can look at the comparison report. You'll also see on here there's a custom budget comparison report, a couple of tabs down. Just like you have a custom income statement, if you establish an income statement, then you can also use that same report to run a custom. We also spend a little bit of time talking about going in and establishing reports using the accounting report tool as well. And that is a free half-hour webinar in case you're interested in signing up for that one. Excuse me, no, I take that back. That's an in-depth one. That's going to be an hour-long one. So we'll have a good chance to to really tear in and go in depth with creating custom reports and creating custom accounting reports. Any other questions? Well, I want to thank everyone once again for taking time out of your busy schedule to attend the webinar today. Like I said, hopefully you're able to get a lot of good tidbits for planning a budget using the AIMsi tools and software that you've invested in. Feel free to drop me a line at 800-670-1736. That's our toll-free number to our sales department, and my extension's 118. If you have any more questions that maybe you came up with after the fact and wanted to get answered really quick, or our support department can probably help out as well. I know everyone here is on a good standing support contract. They're more than capable of answering any questions that you have on that. But thanks for attending, and hope to see you soon at our next webinars.